Welcome to episode 30 of the Non-Fun Gerbils podcast. I'm Luke.
And I am George.
And today we are joined by Jonathan Levine, an entrepreneur in the daily fantasy sports industry and representative of a small group of investors including Jonathan Bales, Peter Jennings and Adam Lefkoe, who have recently entered the NFT space with a bang, buying a number of high-value NBA Topshots. Jonathan gives us an insight into their investment thesis coming into the space. And we speculate over a number of things and generally have a really interesting chat. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Non-Fun Gerbils podcast, the show about digitally scarce gerbils, non-fungible assets, and the growing decentralized economy.
So, Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
You are a figure in the daily fantasy sports betting space. You're the founder of Star Street and Draft.com and Underdog Fantasy, and also an investor in sports cards. So it's really interesting to have someone come in from who's recently joined the NFT space and has come in from a different industry. So we're really looking forward to getting your view on everything that's going on at the moment and discover a little bit about how you've made it into the space and what your sort of investment thesis is on NFTs.
Cool. Yeah, it's been an interesting kind of energy and time-consuming journey recently. That's been really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, everything is just insanely energetic within the space at the moment. We met
for sure.
Maybe a month ago now?
Yeah, probably mid-January.
So I sold you one of my Top Shot cards, but yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that.
Thank you.
Yes, that looks like a great deal right about now. But yeah, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do. We'll try to keep it quick. But so I started a business right out of college in 2009 called Star Street. And the initial vision, the initial product actually was a sports stock market. And back then I was saying we were creating virtual assets and trying to kind of coin this new term of virtual assets. So it's really fascinating to see everything happening now because that was kind of blockchain without the blockchain back then. We had these shares of players that you could trade and would go up and down based on market demands. And ultimately we tied it to fantasy point performance and made it into a bit of a fantasy game. But it was quite similar to what we're seeing today with both sports cards, talking kind of a bit old world, and now with Top Shot and So Rare and some of the sports NFTs out there. So that's kind of really interesting to me since it's so close to something I spent so much time thinking about. That business ended up pivoting into real money fantasy, like FanDuel offered. DraftKings didn't exist at the time. Did that for a bit, sold the assets of that business, used the money to then kind of start a new business, Draft, the same entity, same cap table, but created Draft as a simpler, more casual, more mobile-focused real money fantasy game. Ultimately sold Draft in 2017 to this company, Paddy Power Betfair, which has since rebranded to Flutter. I left there a couple years later, doing a handful of things now, but most recently, about a year ago, started a new fantasy sports company called Underdog, where we offer real money fantasy sports. One interesting kind of little project along the way with a really good friend and actually the second hire at Draft. I had kind of I was involved with and helped have the idea for him to start this thing called Crypto Strikers, which seems like just I think he probably launched in 2018 around the World Cup, but very much an early iteration of what we're seeing with Top Shot and So Rare. When I first learned about NFTs, a good friend of mine is Nick Tomeno, who used to be at Coinbase and runs the One Confirmation Fund. And I think he kind of educated me on NFTs, and immediately I'm just like, oh my God, sports cards on the blockchain. This makes so much sense. So that was kind of an attempt at a project there. Unfortunately, didn't stick with it, but it's made so much sense to me. And now to see it really come to has been fascinating and really interesting for me.
Awesome. And so when did things change recently that you started actually, or that you discovered Top Shot? Was that your entry in?
Yeah, Top Shot was my first NFT purchase. I have my friend, actually the same friend who started Crypto Strikers, probably told me about it over the summer. Unfortunately, I kind of was like, oh, this is interesting, but I'm busy as I normally am, and I didn't really dive in. It was the same with sports cards. People have been talking my head off about sports cards for a while at the time, and I didn't dive in until the end of the summer. But ultimately, I just kind of heard about Top Shot a couple more times. I ended up getting connected to Roham, the CEO, and talking to him, and I was like, okay, there's something interesting here. Again, I mean, it pains me every time I didn't hop on it immediately, obviously, but got busy, had it on my to-do list. At some point, I actually organized my friend Gianni, who founded Crypto Strikers. I had him; he was on Top Shot very early, and I had him do a Zoom call, and I brought some friends there. Peter Jennings, who was part of the purchase, Adam Lefkoe, who was part of the purchase of the jaw you sold us, the jaw Cosmic, and Gianni just kind of gave us a tutorial of how it worked. And I was like, all right, this is super simple. And then I came back a couple weeks later. I forget why. I'm like, all right, I have some time. It's on the top of my to-do list. I'm actually going to look at this. I went on, I browsed around. I found, I think, 3 moments that I really wanted. Of course, kind of not having confidence yet, I started like checking them. I checked them with my friend Gianni and a couple others. I'm like, what do you think? Before I even got those responses back on the first 2, they were Devin Booker Cosmics, both under $2,000. They both went. And I'm like, oh shit, I did not expect this market to be kind of so fast. And then there was a jaw Cosmic that was listed for 6,000. And so I started depositing money to get that jaw Cosmic for 6,000, and that went as I was putting my money in. So that both gave me some confidence, like, okay, maybe I'm even just in my limited time here, I'm able to evaluate what may make a smart purchase, because I went and looked at intangible market at the time, and I'm like, those were the only Cosmics that sold in this period. It's not like everything is selling, just the stuff I identified. So maybe I am able to make a good judgment here. And then it's like, okay, there's some velocity here. So I made that. I got some money and I made some purchases then. I got another Devin Booker. I think it was a Cosmic, might have been a hollow for like 3,000, maybe a Tatum or 2. Like I spent, I don't know, maybe 10K or so. And I called up some friends, and I kind of told a bunch of people at the time, like, this is really interesting. I think there's probably a good chance these assets 10x. There's a chance they 100x. There's probably a better chance of them going to zero than anything else. This is January 11th when I'm saying this. And it was kind of similar to when I first made the decision to purchase Bitcoin. I wasn't super early. I think it was probably 2017, beginning of 2017, maybe 2016. But I kind of thought the same thing. I'm like, okay, these could 10x, these could 100x. They could go to zero. At that point, I thought there was probably a better chance of them Bitcoin 10xing than going to zero. Obviously, that makes it a good investment. So similar thing here, though. I thought, okay, this could probably more likely go to zero. I got some other friends excited. Other people started making some purchases. We reached out. Jonathan Bales, Peter Jennings, and I decided, hey, let's buy this. I forget, Luke, you must have had it listed, and we tried to negotiate it down from you, but we thought that would be a good purchase. We ended up buying that jaw Cosmic from you, and Jonathan Bales, who's a good friend, he wrote an article about it. And what came next, I don't think anyone expected. But that article basically took their site down for 3 days out of the week, and it feels like it just led to kind of this hockey stick growth we've seen, right? Like if you look at the days before that, I think that Top Shot was doing like, I don't know, it was 550,000. I feel like at the beginning of January a day in volume, and then like a couple days later, it's 500,000 and 1 million and 6 million and 48 million, right? So it feels like that blog post was maybe the moment that started this hockey stick growth.
It was really well written. Like, you know, not surprised, but it was like,
oh, he is a phenomenal writer,
and it's incredible how something like that can be that inflection moment where it's like someone demystifies it for you on a large forum, and away we go. And right. it's credit to the NBA Top Shot guys, to the team at Dapper, to have created something where, you know, the funnel is open and user friendly enough to just connect the dots there, right? So you know, blog post, boom.
Exactly. They need a little Kindle, but they built the whole platform, right? They built the whole the infrastructure that it took one Kindle and off it went, right? And it was as well when I made that first purchase back around January 11th. I'm like, all right, I think I can see this. I could see how in 3 to 5 years, there's I was saying probably 3 to 5% chance that this is going to be bigger than sports cards. Right, than the amount traded in sports cards. I was sports cards obsessed at that point. I still am, but kind of has gone away and way into this. And then I made a couple purchases. I got a little more confident. But then after seeing that, so Jonathan Bales wrote the blog post, and I thought that people were going to have such an issue with quote unquote buying pieces of nothing. Right. And to me, it's like there's no difference from sports cards. It's the same thing. They're not worth it because the cardboard they're printed on or even the image. Anyone can go get that same image online and do whatever they want with it. It's worth it because someone else is willing to pay for it. And so this to me was totally the same. But I thought people would have more of a hurdle getting there. Bales wrote that post, and it felt like instantly the entire daily fantasy sports community was all in on Top Shot. And I have the experience of talking to anyone who will listen about sports cards for the last 7 months, and no one dove in that same. And I understand why. Sports cards are. I love sports cards. They're a horrible experience. You've got to decide what you want to buy. If you want to invest in Zion, for example, there's over 1,300 different rookie cards. You've got to pick the right one to really maximize value. You've then got to go on eBay. You've got to figure out what it's worth, which is pretty hard to do. You've got to be there at a certain time to win the bidding. If it's ungraded, you've got to hope it's not damaged. You've got to hope it gets to you undamaged. You've got to get it in the mail. You've got to open it up. You've got to send it into grading. You pay for 10-day service. It takes 4 months. You've got to get it back. You've got to list it on eBay. You've got to deal with people messaging you and all the bullshit that comes with selling on there. Then you sell it, and you got to cross your fingers and hope that you're not dealing with someone who's going to, if he gets hurt or if the value goes down, refund it, do a refund, because you can do a refund, no questions asked, in like 60 days. So if Zion gets hurt, there comes the refund, and now you're held with a less valuable card, right? Just like all this friction. And as I saw all of daily fantasy hop right in, I realized I realized already, but it's like, okay, this really removes all the friction, and that's going to make the adoption of this way bigger. So then I started telling people, hey, I think there's a 15-20% chance it's bigger than sports cards in 3 to 5 years. And as I kept getting more confidence and kept seeing more people dive in and kept having more friends hitting me up saying, oh my God, this is interesting, I'm buying. I'm like, okay, that number kept creeping up. And I'm like, all right, 30, 35, 40. And then I looked at Crypto Slam. This is 2-3 weekends ago now. And I saw at one point it was 48 million in 24 hours. I'm like, holy shit. And I tweeted out, I'm like, I'm probably one of the most bullish people on this. And I thought it was going to be 3 to 5 years. And I was 3 to 5 years off. It's bigger than sports cards today. And I was talking to, last week, I was talking to the largest sports card broker, someone who's insanely knowledgeable about sports cards, has been in his business for 30 years. And he's as optimistic as anyone about sports cards. And I said, hey, how much do you think is going to be traded in total volume in sports cards over the next year? And his answer was 1 to 2 billion. So I'm like, all right, let's do the math on 2 billion. You divide that by 365, that's 5.5 million a day. Top Shot's bigger. Top Shot's bigger today than sports cards. And that is crazy, right? I was probably as optimistic as any, and I was 3 to 5 years off.
It was 3 to 5 weeks.
Insane. And I mean, then the question is, where can this go, right? And that's, as I look at investing and I continue investing, I mean, people are asking me, hey, when are you going to sell these? And my current position is I'm holding forever. I mean, I'll evaluate that along the way, and that certainly may change. And that's different to how I view some other NFT investments I've made. But I have strong belief in Top Shot and both the company and what they've done and the kind of subject matter and the opportunity there. And so I'm now thinking, okay, we've kind of seen the pattern over and over where people try to compare the new digital thing to the old physical thing and say, okay, what's the market cap of taxi cabs? How many rides are there? What's the size of that? Okay, that's how big Uber can be. Uber is what, 10x bigger than taxi cabs ever were? Probably more. And I think we're likely to see that same thing here. So I was just part of purchasing the LeBron James Cosmic for $208K that purchased out of Jesse's account, 2 weeks ago or so. And this is crazy, and it's probably most likely I'm wrong, but if I had to guess what that's going to be worth in 3 years, if I had to guess a number, I'd say $20 million. And that's thinking about, okay, what are the most valuable LeBron James cards worth? That Upper Deck Exquisite, which is kind of what I keep comparing the Cosmic to in my head. I think the top graded version of that would sell for $8-10 million now. Probably will keep appreciating over the next 3 years, but
oh man,
I think the scarce digital, the one that this market's going to be bigger, and we just keep seeing that the pattern matching tells us over and over again, digital ends up bigger than physical.
I'm gonna have to buy all mine back.
So Luke, thank you for the jar.
Well, in that case, I have to ask this question right now. What do you think that jar is going to be worth in 10 years? Number one Cosmic, Ja Morant. Number one Cosmic. So the Ja, and I also bought the Zion number one Hollow, which has kind of the double benefit of jersey number and number one. Nice.
Look, those are a lot more speculative. If I had the assets I've chosen that I'm most bullish on are the LeBron Cosmics. I currently have a piece of 4 of them. Those I'm quite confident. I mean, I think we'll see $1 million one. within a year, within 9 months, probably at this point. The Jaw and the Zion, I mean, those are the highest upside, highest risk reward, right? If they turn into, or if they continue on their trajectory, and obviously injuries are a concern, especially with the way they both play and their makeup. But like, if they end up being Hall of Famers, it's going to be interesting. I mean, one of the things one of my theses coming into Top Shot was that as this grows, the marketplace behaviors will trend more towards sports card behaviors. So that actually means less of a premium on serial number, which I think over the last month we've seen play out. In sports cards, jersey number or number one, I mean, you're at most seeing a 5% premium to any other number.
Oh, really?
And so that's one where I'm like, okay, it kind of makes sense. And this was actually my thesis also as I started investing in sports cards at the end of the summer. I'm like, I had a lot of conviction that 10x new people were going to come in the next couple of years into sports cards for a whole bunch of reasons. I kind of thought that was happening, and it has been, and it is happening. And so I'm like, all right, rules are going to change, right? Right now you've got the old collectors who agree one thing, and they're the majority, but soon they're going to be the minority. So rules change, and what are the new rules going to be? I'm attracted to these kaboom cards. They're really pretty. I've started buying a lot of those, and those have appreciated higher than other cards have appreciated. So like, kind of trust my intuition, trust my gut. How are the rules going to change? So I thought that was going to happen there, and then in Top Shot, I'm like, okay, the next wave of people are going to be people who are somewhat familiar with sports cards, so they're going to think with that in mind. And so that made me believe that serial numbers will be less valuable than they are, and I think it has progressively moved that way, and I think it will continue to. I think they will hold more value than they do in sports cards, but I think it will kind of slowly shift away. And then what I did is I when I dove into sports cards, I actually hired someone full time to be my sports card assistant, which you really need to be able to invest in that, and that's how much friction there is. You don't need that nearly as much with Top Shot, which shows part of the opportunity. But I had him kind of create a spreadsheet of, all right, let's look at all the cosmics and their prices, and then let's relate it to a couple things. And I think there's kind of two arguments. There's either let's look at the premium 2019 products, and Series 1 was 2019. And so we took 2019 NBA Prism and said, all right, what are all these players' cards worth there? And okay, if a LeBron Cosmic's worth 150K, what does that make everyone else's prices worth if you're using those multiples from 2019 Prism? And that puts the LeBron at the 150K. Luka, since it's his second year, is the same price. And then everyone else, the next highest player is like Giannis at like 16K, and except for the rookies. And then you've got Ja and Zion, if you're using the multiples from that, at like 1.2 million. And so I'm like, okay, that right there says rookies, and a little bit of LeBron. But then there's the argument, hey, this is Series 1, so this is everyone's rookie. So then I said, okay, let's take everyone's premium rookie product and look at the multiples of that. And then if we're doing that, and if you set LeBron at 150, the next highest player is Giannis and then Luka, and they're both below 20K. So that just screams LeBron. So my main thesis has been LeBron and rookies, because I think it's probably somewhere in between the two, because it is kind of everyone's rookie, but they're also worse than true rookies that year. So when people ask me what to buy, I'm like, to be honest, I'm not paying a lot of attention to the marketplace and kind of the daily moves, because I'm not looking to quick flip. I'm looking to buy kind of long-term hold pieces, but I continue to think LeBron and rookies.
Well, LeBron has been doing very well, hasn't he? That's been, and I sold my number 12 LeBron Cosmic for $12,000, which at the time I was like, this is a record-setting sale. Like, this is amazing, but
I wish you sold that to us too.
I'm cool because it's part of the history, isn't it? And I was part of that history, and that's cool.
Hey, you were that Bales post, which lit a fire. You're a big part of that one.
So it's not just all the traditional trading cards people coming in, because of the lower friction, the ease of using it. So the barrier of entry is much lower. It means that you've actually got a much larger audience, as you say, like Uber compared to taxis.
Right.
That's very interesting. After this wave of Top Shot, do you think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs and companies repositioning themselves and thinking about how they're going to enter into this space in the same sort of way as Top Shot has?
Yeah. I've had a bunch of conversations. I mean, even in the last week, I've had a conversation with two different companies that are kind of looking to do NFTs for artists, for musicians. And I mean, I think there's there's going to be a lot, everyone, like I've made the comment a handful of times to people, I think the rights of IP and licenses right now, overnight, they basically 10x. I'm not sure if people realize that yet and if the license holders are charging 10x, but Marvel and Pokemon and the League licenses, they all just became way more valuable. And so I think there's going to be a lot of people. I mean, look, if you're a musician or an artist right now, you're trying to get yourself into NFTs. I think we're going to see a lot that end up pretty damn close to valueless. And I'd expect this to follow a similar kind of boom bust cycle of like .com and ICO, where I kind of think from today forward, in the next 3 months, 99% of the NFTs that come out will end up near zero or trend towards zero in terms of value. But that 1%, or really the 0.1%, will be like, if you go back to the kind of around the ICO boom, if you bought Bitcoin, ETH, if you bought Coinbase, like stock, you're doing well. But if you bought into all the other stuff, you're not, right? And back in .com, if you bought Google or Amazon, well, that outpaces everything. But there, 99% of stuff ended up losing. So I think we're going to see, I expect to see really similar dynamics with NFTs, especially as there's this gold rush of kind of just like, hey, print NFTs. You saw what like Logan Paul did a couple of days ago. And it's like, those are pieces of nothing. And why are pieces of nothing valuable? Well, if someone else is willing to pay for them, they retain value. But will people be willing to pay for kind of that moment in time? Will that hold narrative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line? I doubt it. I obviously can be wrong, and I'm sure I will be wrong on plenty specifically where I judge, hey, this one I want to invest in. Nope, I got that wrong, and that went to zero. And this one I don't want to invest in. Nope, I got that wrong, and that's not worth a lot more. That's going to happen, as will kind of happen in investing in anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of it's down to the story and sort of provenance of a lot of these projects. It takes time to build, and that period of time and how it comes to be and how people understand the project all adds to the value. And it's very hard to do that when you just have an idea and release something. So there feels like there's no longevity to it if there isn't a sort of deep well of understanding amongst the community as to the importance of something. I mean, you can point to something like CryptoPunks, right? That you know, given away free. There was an issue with the smart contract. They minted like loads more, or and they've sort of gradually sort of, you know, become this kind of sort of anchor point for NFTs in a way. Same with the Pepes, which was actually before that. But so I totally take the point, and I think that, you know, NBA Topshot is creating that folklore currently because of the hockey stick. The hockey stick is enough. I mean, and all the other things we speak about, but people will look back at the time when you know, these things were flying off the shelves at prices that for those of us who were involved in the beta couldn't even conceptualize, which is, I guess, market dynamics, right? Like I just said, I want to buy every one that I've ever sold back, and I can't. But anyway, it's a really interesting point, that, and I guess the trick is to find out what the 0.1% is, and it sounds to me like you've got a pretty good method of trying to sort of find those.
Yeah, no, I mean, as you say it, so it's just become kind of more and more apparent to me how much of the world we live in and what is valuable is because of narrative, and how important narrative is. I think it's interesting. I mean, you saw with obviously GameStop and the Robinhood trader, like narrative. Tesla. Why is Tesla the most valuable car company in the world? Their business today doesn't dictate that. It's the narrative of what they can be, and it very much becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're able to create that narrative. They're able to raise their valuation. They're able to have access to capital to actually build what they believe in their narrative, and it continues to self-fulfill. Had they not been able to tell that story and build that narrative, they don't make it and they don't exist, right? But today they're more valuable than every other car company combined. So it's interesting, even in the old world stock market, like, it's narrative matters. Narrative really matters. And yeah, I mean, I've got Thesis, obviously, I'm developing, and they're changing fast, or they will change fast in terms of what are the NFTs to buy. But it's been interesting from my background being in fantasy sports for so long. I very often would have investors be like, you're a games business, and games are hits-driven businesses. Like, how are you we don't invest in hits-driven businesses. How are we going to know there's going to continue to be the hits? To which I've always replied, the sports are the hits, right? The sports keep the content coming. And that's why I believe that sports, like sports cards, stay forever interesting. There are counterexamples, Pokemon and Magic, but they're kind of rare. And Pokemon, especially, I mean, they're both games. Pokemon has done such a great job of continuing to build the narrative. I do believe in CryptoPunks, and I have pieces of some CryptoPunks. Peter Jennings has kind of led the purchases of, and I've done those with him. And that was actually just a fun tangent story, but I'm skiing in Tahoe, skiing downhill. I get a call from him. I pick up as I'm skiing. Send me 10 ETH. I'm like, for what? We're buying a CryptoPunk. What's that? Okay. Get in the chair. Let's send 10 ETH. That's seamless, right? And the next day, the thing's up 2x. And it's like, wow, what a world. But yeah, CryptoPunks have built the narrative. They were, I mean, I don't know if they technically were the first, but in narrative, they were the first, right? I guess they kind of came before NFTs and helped define what NFTs are, but kind of in narrative, they're the first. There's only 10,000. They've totally entered the mainstream narrative and pop culture, and you've got a lot of interesting people buying them, making them their avatars. And it's like, okay, NFTs are going to be a thing. Yeah, I think there will be a boom and bust, but they will remain a thing. I think on the other side of that bust, maybe 3, 4, 5 years out, we're going to see what I kind of feel like we're seeing with kind of core crypto and blockchain now, where 2017, there was a huge boom. A lot of it has died off. But now the stuff that was really kind of right and provides true utility is starting to create meaningful value. I kind of feel like we'll see a similar thing with NFTs. We're going to see a rush, an absolute boom. Everyone who's got a profile is going to put out an NFT, cash grab. There'll be some bust on that. Most of those will trend to zero. But then on the backside, we'll see things that have true utility and true value. And I've got some dreams forming of what some of those things can be. And I think that's really interesting. And it will be really kind of industry world changing. But I think it's going to take time for NFTs to get there.
You make a really interesting point about how sports, they're always producing stories because new people come in, they make a name for themselves. And the guys at the sort of the top of the pyramid kind of retire into legendary status and become even so you have a sort of constant flow of amazing stories. And I guess to bring this back to Top Shot, currently my eyes are like wide open at this flow valuation that we're seeing, right? I mean, it's in the multiple of billions, and like fair play to them, like they've built like a chain that will happily house anything NFT. But the way I understand it is that there's one absolutely gigantic project on there, but in terms of valuation, as you say, there's boom and bust, and right now the valuation looks crazy. However, it's interesting to think that NBA Topshot has this constant conveyor of narrative, and then you think of the other sports in the world. I mean, not to mention like football, American football, or and one feels like when you do like go out that sort of 3 years, 5 years, it actually does produce a really interesting narrative that actually flow might actually be undervalued.
Do you know how economics roll to flow? Like, if we're just taking Top Shot, what does Top Shot have to do in transaction volume for flow to make $1 billion? Do you know how that functions?
It's interesting. I think the flow token is part of the security mechanism, right? So like the more gets built on the chain, the more value that accrues to the chain, the more value there is in securing the chain. So you stake your token in the network to keep the network secure, and the network rewards you for doing that. And it's in a funny kind of way, it's actually the best use of tokens, really. We talk about utility tokens in this sort of crazy 2017 rush, and outside of a few other examples, I think staking has this whole proof of stake mechanism has become the best use case of tokens. It's collateral that supports the network and secures the network so that the network can do what it does. And so in that sense, it is kind of a proxy to value, and it does soak up not only the sort of the current sort of value running through the chain, because it has to reach a point where this chain is secure, but at the same time, it will also soak up future narrative and future speculation about how big the chain can get. So I do draw you can draw a pretty straight line between the success of the chain and the underlying token. And there are other examples that are slightly more tenuous, like Uniswap, which is doing billions. It is doing more volume than Coinbase, and they have this governance token, and the market kind of sees it as a proxy token to the value. It sort of charts but it's not a staking token. So I think the market kind of gives things a benefit of the doubt a bit in terms of, but there is a kind of real anchor with staking tokens. So I guess the bit that one could sort of say is that, well, Flow is in competition with some other pretty major layer one chains, and so that's really the big narrative to play out. I think is a kind of a specific use case chain going to steal the limelight from a Polkadot or a Cosmos or an Ethereum, like something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, super interesting.
And if this really grows to its potential, maybe it's all they need, right? Is just the Dapper projects built on it. But yeah, interesting. What's been Flow's multiple since mid-January? Would I have been better off buying Flow or buying the jaw for $35K?
So Flow was in January when it launched. The end of January, it launched at $8, which was up from 38 cents or 10 cents if you bought in the community sale. So they allowed up to $1,000 for anyone in the community. They said absolutely anyone who's been here can buy up to $1,000 at 10 cents, which was the pre-sale for the early investors.
So what's the math on that $1,000 right now?
That $1,000 is now worth
380,000. Is it?
That's not bad. That's not a bad return.
$380,000.
Wow. Whew.
So, but that's locked up for a long time. So anything could happen between now and October when that becomes available. Right. Or in fact, actually, that's locked up for 2 years. So 50% unlocks after 12 months for the community sale.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people who were in the community sale who are now sitting there going, oh my goodness. And they've got a long, long wait ahead of them. And it's going to be amazing to see what happens in the next 9 months. But if your thesis is correct, that could be anything. Yeah, I would imagine that the Dapper will also be going after other leagues and other sports.
Yeah,
sure. And then there'll be lots of other people trying to do the same, and they'll be saying, all right, which chain do we need to do this on? Is Flow the best place?
Yeah, I think one of the big questions for me about the longevity of the value of the NBA Topshot and Dapper assets is what the leagues decide with the licenses. I mean, the licenses are what create the value, in large part, what create the value here. And maybe an interesting anecdote. A lot of people have asked me kind of what's different about sports cards now versus back when I was a kid collecting. So prior to the summer, I hadn't bought a sports card in somewhere between 15 and 20 years. But as a kid, it was my favorite thing to do. Back then, in kind of the late 90s or in the 2000s, it was kind of called the junk wax era. And the leagues didn't do specific deals, or they didn't have exclusive deals. So there were 5 or 6 different companies printing cards for each league. And there was just like a plethora of supply. And 2 things changed. Well, 3 things changed with cards that have really helped create kind of this wave of value. The leagues went exclusive. So only Panini can make cards for NBA and NFL. Only Topps can make cards for the MLB, for baseball. And so that was one change. 2, the companies got smart around kind of scarcity and started to print serial numbered cards. So this is a 1 of 1, this is a 1 of 10, this is a 1 of 100. And then 3rd is grading became more kind of a piece of the culture of cards, and the grading companies started growing. One of them just sold for nearly $1 billion. PSA Collectors Universe is the parent company. And so you send your cards in to get graded, and a 10 is more valuable than a 9, is more valuable than an 8, etc. And they have population reports. So you can go and see, okay, of this Michael Jordan rookie card, there's only 310 PSA 10s. That's more valuable than the 9s, of which there's 1,000 of, whatever, right? So it created this kind of scarcity and understanding of the supply. And we'll see what happens here. I mean, if I'm one of the leagues, I'm doing the deal with Dapper, right? Because at this point, it's working. It's found money. It's huge sums of money, right? Dapper's raising at a massive valuation, large amounts of money. They know how important these are, I'm sure. And the other option for a league is, okay, you go with a startup. It just feels too risky for them. I've kind of thought, okay, what if they do a deal and they own half of it? It's unlikely. It's like, you go with Dapper. I think Mark Cuban was quoted recently saying this will probably be the third largest revenue stream for the NBA. I forget what time frame he put on that, but probably relatively quickly. And so I think it's like, if you're the leagues, they've got a decision to make. I'm sure there's conversations happening, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Dapper end up with kind of all the meaningful licenses. NBA is probably the most meaningful. Surprisingly, actually, the NBA kind of sports card market and values are probably roughly 5x the NFL. And so I'd rank in NBA, NFL, MLB, and then kind of others probably.
Is that because it's more of a worldwide game, or?
I've asked a lot of people the question because it's been surprising to me. Worldwide definitely plays into it, but it doesn't feel like that should be a reason it's 5x. The players are more identifiable versus football. They have their helmets on. They're more kind of celebrities and outspoken, and so maybe that's a piece of it. I don't have a good answer for it. It's been something that's surprising to me. You have, I guess, if you think of who are the biggest legends, you've got Jordan, you've got LeBron, you've got Kobe. Like, those seem to outweigh the status of most other sports icons.
I suppose the other thing here that plays into it is collectability, and a Dapper released project having the back story of CryptoKitties now sort of supplemented by the unbelievable already success. Like, if the thing shut down tomorrow, it would already be like beyond the wildest dreams, I suspect, of many of the guys in the team. And coming back to that narrative, that will play into the collectability of them, and people will, as you say, I think leagues will want to, give themselves that head start, right? because it all sort of makes sense. Super interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch. So rare. Well, I've been kind of buying on there recently. Personally, I think it's the wrong decision to be such a game. And I think that kind of changes the dynamics, changes how to value assets, and changes the behavior. And not as many people are interested in that. So I don't have the same belief in the long-term upside of that as I do in Top Shot right now. But it's been interesting to kind of see it for a different sport and a slightly different mechanism. I also wonder how Top Shot, I don't know if they've talked about this publicly or if it's been answered, but what Dapper is going to do when they have other sports, right? I believe they have the UFC license. Like, that's obviously not going to live on NBA Topshot.com. Where's that going to live? And is there going to be a marketplace where you can trade all of them, or are you going to go to sports specific or kind of IP specific for each? I'm quite curious how that's going to evolve.
I think eventually there will be even just OpenSea integration. So, OpenSea, so they are implementing Flow, I believe. And so
I've heard that.
So that, all your Top Shots will eventually be able to be traded on third-party marketplaces. And so you will have Flow-specific third-party marketplaces. You'll have cross-chain ones. And then there's, once Polkadot is fully functional, you'll have cross-chain marketplaces with, actual on-chain transactions moving from one to another, eventually. But yeah, I think the aim is to decentralize this, because at the moment, Top Shot is a custodial wallet, and I think that it's in their plan to move to to have the option to move to a non-custodial option, and I think that would be good for the space in general.
And do you think their vision then becomes that most of the secondary sales are happening on their marketplace or other marketplaces?
I think probably their marketplace. They get their cut on their marketplace.
You'd imagine they'd want that, yeah.
maybe they find a way of getting a cut on secondary marketplaces. Maybe they'd arrange that with OpenSea.
Do you have a similar? It's harder to have a thesis in art buying. You have a far more kind of architectured thing with NBA because of players and serials and things like that. But you also are looking at the art space and buying NFT art. What are your thoughts in that direction?
Yeah. I mean, I think my life has led me to be very well predisposed to what's happening with NBA Top Shot. I don't think I've ever bought a piece of what you would kind of call art. You hang on artwork in my life. My friends would make fun of me because my walls had nothing on them, and they'd call it psycho white. It just never occurred to me to buy a painting to put up there, so it's not super in my DNA. And I mean, I've been very curious about it as it's been happening. I have friends who are involved in like super rare and saying, Jeremy, buy something, buy something. And I kind of had an interesting experience there where I went on, it was the night of the Super Bowl, actually. After the Super Bowl, I went on there and like really browsed. I'd been there before, but like really browsed it for the first time. And I found an artist there that I loved his stuff. And I'm like, I want to buy one of these. And I didn't, like, I sent it to some people like, hey, do you think it's a good buy? And like, I think it's all going to be based on artists. I don't know who this is, whatever. Right. And so I didn't really make a move. And then I came back 10 days later and his stuff had been selling for 5 to 10 ETH and was now selling for 50 to 100 ETH. And I'm like, oh shit, I was right. And I've learned for myself, like, trust my intuition, trust my gut. And it's something I very much kind of, it's how I behave, right? If I believe in something, I'm comfortable going after it, even if other people think it's foolish, right? Buying the jaw moment for 35K, people thought I was nuts. Buying the Zion for 100K, people thought I was nuts, right? Over and over again. And I'm comfortable with that. So that was an interesting moment to me where I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe I do know this, and it also occurred to me, it's like, okay, art's never really made sense to me. It's never something that's been like, I kind of understand why some artists can create value in its narrative, right? Again, it's all narrative and what it's worth, kind of what someone else is willing to pay. But why I was at the Art Basel or in Miami that year when someone put a banana on a wall and sold it for whatever ungodly amounts of money they sold the banana on the wall for. And it's like, why is that valuable? Well, someone created a narrative and someone else thought, agreed, and bought it. So it kind of makes sense, kind of doesn't. But I'm like, okay, why is that any different here? It's not. And then what are the improvements here? What is the friction it removes? It removes a ton of friction. Here's why I'm probably never going to buy a piece of physical art. Well, to do that in any kind of educated, hoping to make a good investment way, I don't even know the right steps, but I probably got to go to a gallery. I don't have to trust what they're telling me. There's no way to see what things have sold for, what things are worth, recent transactions, anything. I'm going to see what's in that gallery. So I don't know. I'm going to see 0.00000000001% of all the art in the world and just like have to make a bet and now buy a big bulky thing and take it with me. I'm staying in an Airbnb right now, so I can't really have it here, right? Like all this friction. With crypto art, I can go on Super Rare, I can go on OpenSea, I can go on Nifty and Rarible, and like tonight I could see the entire universe of art. And I can see what people have paid. I can see what stuff's worth. I can make my purchase. I can store it there until I want to put it in an infinite objects frame or whatever, however I want to manifest it. So it removes all the friction in a similar way to sports cards and Top Shot for me. So I understand it and I'd like to invest in it. I haven't done much in terms of what you would define as crypto art yet. I bought my first couple pieces a friend sent me. Kobe Bryant, the Forever Mamba by Boss Logic on Nifty Gateway. And I saw it. I'm like, this is beautiful. It's Kobe. This makes sense. I can see how people would want this. Okay, I'll buy it. So I've actually bought 2 of those because I bought it. I kind of forgot I bought it. I checked 8 days later and it went from $1,000 to $18,000. I'm like, okay, maybe I was right here. Let me buy another one. And then I think that's really it. I was part of I was one of the winners of the Blau NFT drop that just happened a couple days ago. And that was one where I kind of said, okay, this feels like it's making history. I had heard Blau, talk on Clubhouse a number of times and been just very impressed with him. And I'm like, all right, this is a chance to be part of history. There's some precedent that shows, hey, if you have that NFT that's part of history, it's going to retain some value. I think there will be a lot of attention on this. I don't really know what I'm buying, and I'm not sure I don't think it has true utility. But I'm kind of curious how he will. And he said in the Clubhouse, like, whoever buys this, you're my family. You're going to have my cell phone number. Like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I can get him drinking some of my tequila. That would be fun, right? Like, and build a relationship there. I don't think I said it earlier. I started a tequila company, so that's where that came from. But but yeah, I think that to me was hey, this is interesting. There will be a ton of attention on this. Is it an asset to hold long term? I don't know. I don't really see why it would be yet. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't see why it would be. But there's probably going to be a ton of attention on it. So I'll probably have the opportunity to sell it at a profit, as there's all the press written about this being first. And maybe it's gonna kick off this wave of albums dropping as NFTs, and it will be the first, the same way people say CryptoPunks is the first NFT, and it will hold value for that reason as a memento. And then great, I'm holding it and I hold the value.
It's really interesting that you sort of showed there that sometimes there can be potentially a sort of real world link to an NFT. Like you can get an experience holding an NFT, and you can buy in as a sort of member of a club into something as an NFT. There's still so much to explore. We did an interview a few weeks ago with the guy who runs an NFT protocol called POAP, and it's like proof of attendance protocol. So when you turn up to a conference or something or an event, you get this kind of NFT that goes in your wallet, and you can sort of prove you were there. And what was really interesting coming out of that conversation was that if you turned up to certain events and you could prove it, you could then get tickets to go to an event to DevCon 6. Is it DevCon 6 or DevCon 5? Can't remember. There's been so many.
6, yeah. 6.
And so, there's a crush of people trying to get into that Ethereum conference, right? And that showed a really nice link between, the digital and the real world. And there's so much to mine there as a concept, especially when you start thinking about music and concerts and gigs and backstage and even if it's still in the digital space, but access to a forum or and that still feels like really untapped opportunity.
That's where I feel like when I talk about that's where I think value will come. That is understandable value. I think the Blau auction, there were a lot of pieces of it which I just think were genius auction dynamics. But then also you look at the top first place, I believe gets to create a song with him. Second through fifth place gets to maybe create a beat or a line or something like that with him. Like, I can see how that's valuable, right? To someone that's well worth $5 million to be able to put out a song with a famous DJ, right? So I can see that. I talked to someone who has access to or owns some rights, and it's like, okay, if we're talking, just making it up, like if we're talking Metallica, well, what do you think someone will pay to be on the tour bus with Metallica? There's people who would easily pay $10 million for that, right? So you can put that into NFTs and you can say, hey, whoever is this gets to come on our tour bus on this date every year. And whoever has this one, you get a ticket to our festival on this date every year. And whoever has this, ultimately with music, I mean, hopefully, I think securities laws don't allow for this now, but you can get royalties for specific songs through NFTs. And I've kind of got the vision of it. Feels obvious to me that the next evolution of music listening will feel like a Spotify-like interface, but it will be an NFT player, and there will be a token economics attached. And whenever I listen to an artist song, it'll just send a token their way, kind of behind the scenes, but it will kind of be done through that.
That exists for podcasting already, actually.
Oh wow, what's that company?
I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'll post it in the show notes.
Cool. You guys should try it. You guys should do this on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So it's based around Bitcoin, that one. But yeah, it exists.
Interesting.
Yeah, it rings a bell. I love the idea of being able to provably show you were the first person to listen to a song. Just conceptually, that being able to do that, like I can, you can kind of know that it's the artist and the producer, right? And they could probably prove, through that was the case. It's the two of them. And you buy the right, and you're the first person to listen to the song, and you will always be the first person.
That's super interesting, because if you think about so much of it for sports cards is the rookie card, and so much of that is the stamp of, look, I believed, right? I was here first. And so you can see that working the same way, and with musicians and artists of saying, hey, I believed in this person first. Look, I was among the first to listen to his songs.
Yeah, there's such an exciting space still to sort of discover here, and in some ways, the whole top shot thing is kind of in the same way that Top Shot had its own inflection moment. Top Shot will be an inflection moment for other people building other businesses, and it's that kind of moment of like, oh my God, there really is huge value here. And then the musicians come in and the whole thing begins to grow. But you're right. I feel like the ups and downs will come. Just like in crypto, we get far too ahead of ourselves. Like tokens are going to change the world. And then it's like, yeah, but just not quite yet.
Right. You log on a Clubhouse right now, and it feels like every single room is NFT something, and it's all how NFTs are going to change the world. I'm quite bullish on this, but like I think we're out ahead of our skis a little bit, right? I don't think in 6 months the world's going to change materially because of NFTs.
That's right. And then you also have it's a strange word to use because when you're in crypto for so much, you use the word legacy quite a lot, but there's a legacy art world out there with gatekeepers and I think a lot of this will bypass that. Like it'd just be like, you're who, you're what, never heard of you, but over here's a £1 billion business. But they'll all try to understand this as well, and we saw a piece of art by Robert Alice sell at Christie's, which was a beautiful piece of art, which sort of was again the physical and the digital. It had an NFT with it, and it's the whole of the Satoshi's code base beautifully put across these physical artworks, and that was a huge moment in the NFT space. Like Christie's sold an NFT, right. And all of these sort of moments, you could sort of point them on a map as we go through time and say, well, this happened.
Yeah. Do you guys know what the most valuable real art sale is in the history of the world? I'm sure that Google could answer that question quickly, but my guess would be it's around kind of 100 to 200 million.
I don't know. Something makes me think that a Leonardo da Vinci sold for 450 million. Around there.
450, yeah.
450. Yeah. So we saw a Beeple piece sell for 6.6 million a week ago. I'm curious to see. I can't prognosticate this one super well at all, but like I bet it happens where a piece of quote unquote digital artwork sells for more than that piece. And not in the not insane distant future,
and it will be crypto heads that buy it. at the end of this cycle or the next cycle, it's going to be the crypto heads that have the wherewithal,
right. and the riches.
And yeah, exactly. So yeah,
at this rate, it'll be a zombie punk.
Oh man, I've got some punk from Nfts somewhere. I gotta. This Nfts thing. Have you come across that yet? Where it's a nifty exchange where they shard NFTs and you buy pieces of them, but it's all on chain.
That's fascinating to me. I love that.
And I think I bought quite a few shards of an alien punk.
Yeah, you bought loads. I bought a tiny little share, and you chucked in loads. I was like, "Whoa, okay."
Wow. And I've got no idea where they are.
Wow, you got to find those. It's interesting because that's going back to kind of physical world. There's companies recently that I think are fascinating startups that I kind of strong connections to all. Rally Road, Otis, Collectible, which are fractionalization platforms where they're taking celebrity, or they're taking memorabilia, a lot of sports cards, but Rally Road started with cars, all kinds of different collectibles, and they're making them SEC licensed, turning them into securities, and then creating shares of them. And you can buy shares in the IPO of sorts, and then they trade on a secondary marketplace after. And so that's something where when I kind of recently, I think mid-January, I talked to a friend of mine. I'm like, that should all be on the blockchain, shouldn't it? Why are we using the old legacy systems for that? So this is that what you're talking about.
You're an entrepreneur and you understand the sort of the richness of this space. Are you tempted at all to kind of? Did you have that kind of like that well of ideas that just keep coming up? The entrepreneur, like you see a space like this, and you're
Always.
Like, oh man, there's, we could do that. People collect T-shirts, man. We could like, NFT T-shirts.
Totally.
Like, are you getting some of that at the moment?
For sure. Yeah. For sure. I mean, look, back in 2017, I helped convince a friend to put sports cards on the blockchain for the World Cup. So God, I wish I kind of dove all in on that one, right? But no, I mean, talking to Roham and just watching Top Shot happen, I'm like, look, my life has led me to be the person who would understand this, I think, best outside of maybe the people who are building it, right? I've been thinking about this forever. And yeah, no, I think there's just so many applications of this, and I'm excited to keep on learning, keep on investing in them, both the assets and hopefully the companies and the right people building the future, because it feels like the future is kind of, I very much believe the future is going to be rewritten by a lot of the kind of blockchain, crypto, NFT technologies that are out there now. And it feels like that's starting to come to where back in 2017, people kind of saw that it could, but it wasn't really there yet.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's been a super interesting conversation. We've hit on a lot of different areas of the space, and you do have a very unique vantage point from which to come in and experiment with the space and understand the space. So it's funny how you you get these moments of alignment where you come in, the blog post gets written, you buy the NFT, and it's just fascinating how these things line up, and suddenly
totally.
you get sucked.
I wish we could see the future a little more, because we would have bought more before that blog post, right?
Yeah.
That would have made some more sense.
Of course, it's a great.
No one realized that was going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
The same happened with us when we had John Watkinson of CryptoPunks on, and actually John and Matt are incredibly elusive. I think that was possibly, it might be the last interview that they did, which was like a year and a half ago. Wow. There might have been one since, but certainly they're very difficult to get a hold of. And I said to George, we should probably stock up on punks, but we didn't. And at the time they were $20 you could buy a punk for, and a friend of mine bought a load at that price at that time. And I thought, they'll probably come down a little bit first. They never did.
Yeah.
Lessons learned, eh?
The upside of these things makes it seem like the right decision just to go in the second you hear about something, because you might get 99 out of 100 wrong, but if you see any path to it being right, the upside seems so material.
With the liquidity as well, when you talk about the traditional art world and outselling traditional art, just the liquidity alone, I think, should warrant that. The fact that you can resell it straight away to anyone in the world.
And it seems like you can fractionalize it, or that's going to come probably more materially. You could take collateral against it and loans against it, right? So it's a significantly more liquid vehicle because it's digital.
Did you have any, because you wanted to turn it around on us, do you have anything that you'd like to point at us?
I mean, I have so many questions I could ask you guys, but what are the projects that are really exciting you guys these days?
We're trying to get our heads into Avagotchi, right, Luke? We're like, it's a super exciting
what is
project.
Avagotchi is these guys.
Everything.
It's everything all in one. So they created Bulunix, which is gold-backed NFTs. So you take your DGX tokens, which are a claim against gold in a vault in Singapore, and then you stake that behind the NFT that you want. And then at any point in time, you've got the scarcity of the NFT itself, but then you've also got this base level value, which is the gold that's backing it. And at any point you want, you can melt that coin down and reclaim the DGX tokens behind it. So they took that and they decided to up their game, and they created yield-bearing NFTs. So they've used Aave, which is a DeFi protocol, where you can buy a yield-bearing version of a token, like say ETH, and it's. Oh, now I'm really not going to do a very good job of explaining it, but basically it's a bit like Uniswap, and you get a token against which represents your stake in the pool, and you get payments out to. Actually, I'm not sure if that's true. How does it work, George?
Well, no. I think you've very clearly shown everyone that it's not the most straightforward of concepts. But like everything in crypto, you start off scratching your head, and then by the time the thing is established, it's huge and everyone kind of gets it. Like how many people now know how to just put an Ethereum address into a wallet? In fact, you don't even have to do that anymore. You just put, George XYZ at Argent, and off it goes. There was a time back in the day where you'd put in the address, and you'd look at the first 4 letters and the last 4 letters, and you go through and you take a deep breath, and and so things change pretty quick. How quickly did all the portals at Aavegotchi sell?
3 minutes. So basically, it's a game. It's a bit like Tamagotchi. It's Tamagotchi virtual pets, which are NFTs, which you have to get a portal, and then you have to open the portal, and then you have a choice of 10 different Aavegotchis that you can hatch. And then each of those Aavegotchis, you can hatch one of them out of 10, and they need to be backed by either a Uni token, Aave token, or a DAI, or USDT, or any of these different. So you can choose the asset that you're going to back your yield-bearing pet by, and then it's got rarity traits, and then you have to look after it. So there's interactions that you have to do with it to build up traits, and it's so complex, but it's very cool.
Wow!
And they launched this week.
Interesting.
The thing is that money is a huge motivator, right? And then when you take the motivation of money, and then you add in the gamification of it, and then you actually create a place where it's really fun to make money. And people will then educate themselves, even if it's quite complicated. They'll educate themselves to sort of fall down that rabbit hole. And then what happens when they fall down the rabbit hole? They find a community, and they find friends. And before you know it, you're so deep into this thing that you're then explaining it to everyone who's arriving at the front door, and then you get this sort of virtuous cycle going. And it's just so cool to see, people experimenting with digital scarcity and adding all these elements in that make it really sticky, and people keep coming to the party. So, I think that's one that we're super interested to dive in on, and actually, to your last point, just go big straight away.
It makes sense, right? The upside's there.
That's
it's interesting what you just said. It was like that describes daily fantasy, and people. We kind of, one of my businesses, Star Street, was like very at the early days of daily fantasy, and like a community started to develop, and more people learned it and learned how to make money in a fun way. And over time, there's now hundreds of of professional fantasy sports players that derive their income from playing fantasy sports. It's exactly what you just said applies to that. It applies to so many of these things. So I think that's so well said. So interesting.
The other thing that we have been looking at a lot over the last couple of years and really enjoying is Metaverse. The Metaverses, or Metaverse, however you like to call it. But Crypto Voxels is very cool. Somnium Space blows our mind because it's VR, and you're there and you're chatting to people and going to discos on a Saturday night in the new disco,
and all the NFTs
built.
are kind of embedded into it. So like you walk into someone's house and they own that artwork. Like and
people are starting to pay meaningful amounts for plots of land in those worlds, right?
We are poor because of the amount of land we bought. I mean,
I think that probably will end up with you not being poor so soon.
Plots of land are really expensive.
Wow.
Crypto voxels, I think plots are selling for well over 100 ether now. I mean, not by and large, but ones in central districts that are desirable. Somnium Space, it's a couple of ETH minimum for like small plots. So it's
wow. And is there? I mean, I guess there's some spaces which are already popular or populous, but is there scarcity on it, or can they just create infinite amounts of land?
There is scarcity. So the origin city in Crypto Voxels, for example, was 3,000 parcels. Right. It was limited. Right. But then once that was...
So they can make as many more cities as they want, but there is the origin one that's never going to grow.
That's exactly it, yeah.
Interesting.
So there are islands outside of the city. And
Fascinating.
then there's a similar sort of limit on Somnium. I can't remember exactly what it is.
I wanna buy a box at a big stadium to watch all the NFT fantasy football stuff happening. Right? I mean, like that's going to be some pretty serious real estate.
Interesting. I can see that. Can you guys explain Euler beats? I've heard about that a handful of times, but haven't really dove in.
Euler beats, don't know.
I don't know it.
I think I saw Mark Cuban say that this, or Gary V, one or both of them said positive things about it. One said they thought it was the most genius NFT project.
The gerbils are behind. Is this possible?
This is the thing. It's like it's impossible to follow everything.
Mark Cuban's passing you guys on something.
Yeah.
Okay, so create and own an eternal Euler Beats original with the seed and the art plus music generation script. All 27.
So my very brief looking at it, there's some if you own the original, ones can be minted on top of them, and there's some sort of royalty that flows down. Is kind of the very little I understand. That could probably even still be wrong.
I mean, this is it's super cool, right? Because you can look at it already, and ignoring the amount of ether that some of these things are going for, which is already incredible. This is just a perfect example of experimentation, right? Because this is. No offense to the website, it's perfectly simple and cool, and actually, there's loads of stuff in crypto that's like this. But this looks like, this is a really cool idea. Let's try it, and which is actually this. It's the core of crypto. Chuck it up there, make it cool, make it interesting, and see what happens. And here we are, like everything's at like $6,000, $10,000-$15,000. Like cool. Okay. Well, we'll check on that one out. Thanks for giving us something.
Cool. Yeah, that's one that I've got on my to-do list to learn, but that ends up being I get there weeks too late.
It moves so quickly. It does move so quickly.
It really
like
does.
You need one of those kind of like paid for kind of pump groups, like you used to get in the early days. It's like you get early access to all the cool NFT stuff that's coming through, so you get to buy it all first.
Well, it seems like there's more and more NFT funds starting, right? And I mean, I can see how you could have more than one person full time just exploring all of this to try to be first.
Totally.
And there's endless like mini projects or micro projects, they call them, like small projects where they release 5,000 or 10,000 of something, and then it's done over a short period of time, and then it's done, and then it's set, and then maybe that doesn't do anything again. Like an example of that recently was hash masks. So we got a tip that it was happening. And we went and had a look, and already 3,000 had sold. We're like, what is this?
Wow.
What's going on? And then the price goes up incrementally, so the longer you leave it.
Yep. I actually bought a hash mask. I had no idea what I was buying, but I bought a hash mask.
Same. I mean, we had no idea what we were buying because you don't have time to do due diligence sometimes, unless you know the founder, because it's moving so quickly.
You just got to trust the intuition.
We should. We should sort of reconnect in a few months' time and see and compare notes on all the great weird and wacky stuff we found.
I would love to.
So cool to have you on. I think we've had a really interesting NFT chat. Just keep buying the MBAs and stashing them away.
That I will for sure.
I bet you've got some of mine actually. I'm going to. I've taken everything that I have left off the marketplace now.
I don't think I have anything on the marketplace.
Yeah, I went from being like, oh my god, they're selling. This is insane. How cool is this? To like take them all off. Right.
Stop it's amazing how quick that happens. Yeah.
Super cool. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. It's funny that a Top Shot purchase led to this.